Hello, my friends. Welcome back to 605 Speaks. Today is a very important episode because what do almost all South Dakotans have in common? At some point, we will see someone get married, and at some point, we will all get buried. And what do you need for those things? Somebody to get up and say the words. A few of you might know I too am a wedding officiant. A few of you that are watching probably attended the penny wedding that we threw for a couple that thought I was just going to be signing a license for them, and we turned it into a little something more. A lot of you were supporters of that. And so you know that it can go everything from real short, sweet, and simple to, full-blown Kardashian. Weddings are the biggest performance piece of a lot of people's lives. It's like, even when you're not usually wanting to be the center of attention, which I don't understand why no one would want to be the center of attention, but on that day, you will be. So it's like, it's your show. But every show needs some kind of director, some kind of focal point. And today, I have one of the most officianting officiants in the South Dakota area. Welcome to my screen, Mr. Jacob Cox. Hello, Jake.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Good. And your website, your official website, I'm going to put it on the screen, is SiouxFallsWeddingOfficiant.com.
Yes.
So that leads me to first couple questions. Have you been a South Dakotan, a Sioux Fallsian your whole life?
I have lived in South Dakota most of my life. Been living in Sioux Falls now for several years. I don't know how many years off the top of my head.
Dramatic pause, vague answer.
Pause. Since 2013, I think so.
Which I can't believe any date in the 2000s is a long time ago now. I'm still like, I'm one of those people on Facebook that's like, oh, the 70s are oldies, but now, no, the 90s are.
I'm still upset that the 90s are oldies because that is music that, I was listening to that was, new for me.
Right.
Young and in high school, and it's upsetting.
I know. Whenever I hear people doing karaoke songs, I feel like I shouldn't be remembering the first time this played on the radio. I shouldn't be this nostalgic.
I think it was when I heard someone try to call Green Day classic rock, and I was just like, how dare you? How dare you, sir? That was the first CD I got.
So and you're raising a family, living in Sioux Falls, which of course is over here at East River, and you officiate weddings. You marry people for the rest of their lives. You meet strangers and commit them to a lifetime contract.
That's right. And it's so funny because a lot of my couples, when I meet them, the wedding is the first time I've met them face to face.
Yes.
I have a lot of customers. They find me, they pick up my card at the Register of Deeds, or they find me online through my website or through Wedding Wire or The Knot. And I might never even talk to them on the phone before their wedding. It's through, text, email. And then I show up at their wedding and I'm like, I'm looking around like, okay, where's my bride and groom? Got to find those people and talk to them.
Right. You don't want to get cornered by like the groom's grandma for too long. You want to be like, I love you, Ethel, but I got to go punch a clock here.
It's so funny because, I will have the, groom's parents or grandparents be like, so how do you know them? And I'm like, oh, no, I absolutely don't. I'm like Uber of ministers. They just summon from the internet, and I'm here to just.
Yes. Yes. I had said once that I'm kind of like a wedding genie. You just rub the mouse pad the right way, and here I am.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
What made you want to pursue this? Did it start out because you wanted to be the officiant for someone you knew, or is it something you thought sounded cool, or was this a calling from the Lord?
My first wedding was in 2003. I was in the Air Force. Two of my friends were getting married, and they were spiritual, not religious. Uh, and they asked me to officiate for them. I was the friend in common that they'd met through, so it was meaningful for them.
And were they also service members?
Yes,
Okay.
they were service members as well. And so they asked me to get credentialed as an officiant, so I could officiate their wedding. And it was just something that over the next few years it would come up that someone would have an emergency situation where they needed to change their wedding plans.
Right.
A fellow service member in my office would maybe their soon to be stepchild was sick, and they're like, we want to get them seen on base rather than rack up civilian medical bills. And I'd be like, hey, I can do your wedding this weekend, so you guys don't have to worry about taking days
Right.
off like that.
Right.
And you can still have your big wedding later, but you can just
Yeah.
legally.
Make it legal.
And when I got out of the service, for a while I was working at a bar in Volga. And it was funny because occasionally we'd have, women come in and they'd be like, yeah, I got engaged. Woo! And I would jokingly, just be like, well, if you want to hire me as your minister. And a surprising number of them did.
Mm-hmm. You're like, well, you have to buy a round of shots for the house.
Right. So yeah, I ended up, just officiating a couple weddings for random people. I officiated both of my sister's weddings. Before my wife and I got married, when we were still dating, I officiated my wife's one of her sister's weddings.
How do you explain to the person you're going to marry? So I've already had a little experience with this wedding thing.
I early on, it was a little weird because I mean, the first dozen or so, it was very much just like, well, that's not my first rodeo,
Right.
And then now I'm in a position where I can say, hey, I have married hundreds of couples.
Do you know your exact total?
I don't know my exact total.
Because when you started, you weren't planning to keep track.
Yeah, when I started, I wasn't planning to keep track. I'm coming right up on, since I started doing this in earnest, and in 2019 started this as a business, I am coming up on 600 couples that I've married.
Okay. Nice. What have they been predominantly over here in South Dakota? I know on your website you've got the little disclaimer of ask me about Minnesota and Iowa, but your basic outline is for the South Dakota regs. Have they been mostly here in southeastern South Dakota?
Yep, the vast majority of them are in South Dakota, and of those, the majority of them are in Sioux Falls. I have kind of a drop off. I've gone as far away in South Dakota as Rapid City,
right?
And I have.
It's becoming a lot more popular in the Sioux Falls area to have destination weddings, and people don't realize you might want to get legal in your home country. And so there's a lot of people that they need to officiate here in the States, but then they, like you said, they have their ceremony at another time.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the services that I offer is basically this. In South Dakota, you are required to have a wedding ceremony, but it doesn't outline what the ceremony has to be.
Right.
And so I talked to Register of Deeds, talked to a couple other offices with the state, and I kind of nailed down like, okay, I think as long as I stand up there and look official and say, in the presence of those gathered here, do you wish to be wed? And name off the people, and they agree. that meets the legal requirements.
Right.
So I will have a lot of those in my office where the bride and the groom come in, and I have this just, just shy of being completely informal paperwork signing where,
Right.
oh,
Yes, they use the funny word that the wedding needs to be solemnized.
yes,
Which just means that some person, a third party, must guide you through speaking your intents out loud. My little brother eloped, and I was supposed to just be a witness, and then he couldn't keep his mouth shut, and we ended up having a couple other people show up. But he eloped at the courthouse, and it was one of the last ones where they had someone working in the courthouse who would also officiate. She's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. She would officiate if she had time, and she just had to get up and basically make them say their intent. And I was like, oh, I would have been so much more flamboyant. And my brother was like, that's why you were just a witness. We're eloping. We're trying to elope here. But yes, South Dakota uses that fun word, solemnize.
Yep. And yeah, it's just, basically I have to ask them, is it in your intent to be married? And they say yes. And is it your intent to be married? And they say yes. And then
and to this suitable person that we have here.
Like,
I have to ask,
high five.
You have, I know everything from, like you said, in your office to probably more traditional sites, park, garden, chapel, but you married somebody in a dollar store.
I did, yes. I have on my site that I will arrange witnesses for people if they need me to. And I had a couple show up. They didn't have witnesses, and they just kind of had this idea that they could just snag someone who'd be wandering around the building my office is in to be their witness. But pretty much all of the offices except mine are very 9 to 5.
Right.
Showed up at my office, and I'm like, I am the only person in this building.
Yeah.
But there is a Dollar Tree next door. So,
and we'll find somebody there.
So yeah, I walked in, and there was a little old lady had walked in just behind us, and there was a woman in the checkout lane, and there was no one checking out. And I was just like, hey, would the two of you be witnesses for a just super quick wedding? And the lady at the checkout was like, yeah, unless anyone comes to check out. Sure. Oh, absolutely. And we stood there in the checkout line and in the Dollar Tree and did a wedding. And while we were doing it, like, some random people came out of the aisles and then stood there and applauded when we were done. And a couple people like quickly bought like random small items
to give them gifts
as gifts after the ceremony. So it was just very funny. And the couple was just like, oh, this is so us. We're so quirky.
Yeah. But in a way that's so South Dakota that strangers can see something happening and they'll be like, we're all in. Let's do it. There's nothing to do right now between harvest and the next rain. We're in. Let's go.
Exactly.
Everybody likes to have a good story to tell. What do you think, being a South Dakotan and raising your own family here, is probably the best reason to get married and grow up in South Dakota? What do you think is a part of South Dakota that's worth committing your life to another person and spending it here?
It's an interesting question. My wife is not from South Dakota. She's from the East Coast. So I think that's something that, she really had to think about was, what's the reason to marry a South Dakotan and commit your life to living with someone here? And I think my wife really likes South Dakotans. It's kind of weird to say, but there's an attitude here. There's a South Dakota-ness.
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
um, and it's funny, you know, it's you on the internet, you get that joke where, you know, two people somewhere in the nation will bump into each other and both say "ope," and then they'll look up and say what part of the Midwest they're from.
Right. Right.
And that very much is true. You know, we're part of that "ope" part of the
Yes.
world. And
Yes.
I had come across online the other day people talking about how you know, just the Midwest, there's a different attitude, kind of a, you know, it's sort of that Midwest nice had come up.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I had joked about how when I was in California, people seemed almost suspicious of me because I always held doors. And they'd be like, "All right, what's your angle?" Uh,
Right.
and then, and this was just a couple days ago. And then yesterday, I was I was in Yankton for a wedding, and I had stopped at a gas station to get something to drink for my drive home, grab a soda, and ended up just talking to this old guy because, you know, I can't not talk to people wherever
Right.
I can. And this old guy was telling me that he was from Kansas, and he thinks it's just neat how everyone in South Dakota holds doors for people. And I was like, you know, I was just talking about that the other
Right.
day.
That's right. We do that. We do that.
You know, there's just
Even when it's cold out, you'll see
yeah,
some poor fool that was at the front of the line freezing, holding the door for 20 more people. Because if you see one more person coming, you can't be the asshole that goes in. You gotta stay.
right. I think there's a South Dakotaness to the people that's worth sticking around for.
What's with the weddings that the again the word more traditional, the on-site weddings, what's the most South Dakota or Midwest thing you've ever seen somebody have at their wedding that you're like, oh, this is so here. Whether it be like their favors or their clothes or their what's the most down home thing?
I um well, there's, you know, there's definitely been more than a few weddings with the ham and butter sandwiches. Um,
That was
yes. Um, I actually, I had told my in-laws when I got married that, you know, and then this part of the world, you're not married or buried unless there's ham and butter sandwiches.
that's right.
And, and they actually made sure to make a little tray of ham and butter sandwiches on dinner rolls just so they'd be there. So, you know, I'd feel properly welcomed into their family.
Right, right. I do not understand your beef Wellington East Coasters. I
Right, right. Seafood, crab dip.
right. Why is there not thinly sliced pork anywhere? Or even better, thickly sliced, where you can tell they like cut up an Easter ham. This a church lady made this sandwich.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
I definitely get a lot of weddings that have the I feel like if it was anywhere but South Dakota, it would be like a modern farmhouse vibe. But
Yeah.
it's not modern farmhouse, it's just South Dakota where you're like,
Right.
oh cool, someone, you know, walked out to a you know, field and they cut some, you know, sheaves of wheat and they, you know,
Right.
stuff milk bottles and use those as centerpieces,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, okay, that's just a very, you know, just homey cute decor, and probably, you know, the bride and her mom did that before the wedding. And
Right. And here it holds some amount of meaning. You know, I've a lot of people, it is, you can be kind of cliche, but it does hold a lot of meaning to have that, especially if you come from a farming family, to have that. Those hay bales are family too, damn it. That's your brothers, your dads, your grandpas, your moms, your aunts, blood, sweat, and tears right there.
it's just funny because yeah, you if you were to see that, you know, in other parts of the country, you'd just be like, oh, come on.
Right. They bought that at Hobby Lobby. And
Right.
whereas here they're like, I got it from right over there.
Every time that I walk into a craft store and I see like the mini hay bales for $19, I'm just like,
Right.
guys.
Yes. What do you what about this is a segue. Attention, viewers. This is a segue question. What about wedding costuming? How? I mean, obviously, you're kind of dressed for this interview today to remind us of your role. Yes, yes. Have you, other than again traditional suit and tie or casual dollar store, have you seen anything where someone's like, no, we specifically need this costume element, or you roll up and all the groomsmen are wearing rollerblades or something?
I absolutely adore when I have theme weddings booked. Nothing makes me happier than theme weddings. I had a couple with a Dungeons and Dragons wedding.
Did you have to say roll for initiative in your ceremony?
I didn't have to say roll for initiative, but their reading was from the Dungeon Master's Manual on the equitable splitting of loot. So, but the bride and the groom were wearing full cosplay paladin armor with weapons.
And did you know, you didn't walk up on this uninitiated? Did you know they were going to be?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They paid extra for me to customize their ceremony for this to be a special thing. I showed up in a wizard outfit and read them their ceremony out of a big spell book, and they had amazing wedding favors. They gave me a dice pouch with some charm, a D20, and I actually still have the dragon charm that was on the dice pouch. That had a little clip on it. I put that on my keychain, and it's been on my keychain ever since.
because that would be quite a surprise for actually the couple. If the officiant pulled up and didn't know it was going to be a theme wedding, and you were the officiant, you would have been able to probably say, 1 second, you're in suit and tie, 1 second, and like run back to your car and come back as a wizard, because you also cosplay and you are a costume creator. and that have blown their minds.
Costume things just in my car at any given time. I don't know. I jokingly refer to my van as the minivan of holding, because I've got sewing kits and things like that. I actually had a bride who lost a bunch of weight between when she'd last tried on her dress and her wedding. And so her dress didn't fit right. So I ran out to my car and grabbed a big sewing box and just pinned it up, stitched her in. And I was like, all right, they're going to have to cut you out of this dress at the end of the night, but here's the stitches to cut. And tailored her dress while she was in it.
You're like, we're on the clock, baby. We've got to do this. There's no backing out now.
Well, yeah, I just took it in and just, quick little whip stitches. And I'm like, it's good enough. No one's going to see this on the back here. Your veil's going to cover it. You're set, honey.
Yeah.
That's too hard.
This is not just a dollar store wedding. This is Target level. What is your what use does cosplay have in or costuming skills? What do you call a male seamstress? Is it still seamstress? Tailor?
I say I'm a sewist.
A sewist? What do you find in Sioux Falls gives you the opportunity to express that kind of creativity?
A lot of my costuming hasn't just been sewing. It's been things along the line of almost like wearable sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, my costuming and cosplaying got into prop making as well. So I found myself where, I do enjoy making props, and I've made props for actually a TV commercial that was in Brookings. I'm going to be the prop artisan for Young Frankenstein coming up at the Premier Playhouse.
So you have to make sure all of your props conduct electricity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Make sure that I can toss them through the Jacob's ladder and
That's right. I hope that you're not going to be grave digging. Maybe you're just crafting some corpse props for that.
Well, sometimes you need some inspiration. So
yeah, we do what we got to do here in the Midwest. We're nothing if not perfectionists.
I am way too excited about Halloween and do in fact have a garage full of skeletons.
What are we at? We're at 90 as of today's recording. We're probably at 92, maybe even less days, maybe 89.
Gosh, it's close.
We're in the zone.
This year, I managed to get the 12-foot Home Depot skeleton. That's what I am focused on. I am so happy. They dropped on Twitter that they were like, we're having a secret drop of 12-foot skeletons. Like, I had the timer set so I could get online and get one of those. And
that's fantastic. Yeah, I always say that the first day of Halloween is the day after 4th of July. So it's, spooky town all the time. My little black cat here that keeps trying to decide if she wants to be in my lap or not. She's like, oh, it's my season. Have you ever had anybody incorporate a specific holiday into a wedding?
I've actually had a Halloween wedding where the couple was having a supervillain themed wedding, and so they dressed up as supervillain characters that they'd created, and they were wearing matching outfits with domino masks, and they asked me to dress as the Joker for their wedding.
There we go.
So I had my my purple suit, and I went a little I went a little Cesar Romero on that because I was like, I don't feel like shaving off my beard, but I'll just cake over the white makeup.
Right. we don't want the Heath Ledger Joker at a wedding.
Right. So yeah, I went
a little intense.
So I went Cesar Romero makeup and then Mark Hamill Joker voice, and it was, dearly beloved, we're gathered here to witness the joining of two hearts. If only it was surgical.
That would be a new way to determine what level of commitment that people had. If you're like levels of which Joker is levels of seriousness for this wedding. It's yeah, are we looking at a Jack Nicholson? Are we looking at Cesar Romero? And when somebody says Heath Ledger, you're like, I might be booked that day already.
Shucks, yeah.
Shucks. Joaquin Phoenix before he dances down the stairs, maybe. But if they're like Joaquin at the bottom of the stairs, nope, not gonna play that one. Mm-mm. No, I do not want to meet the mother-in-laws. With looking at other states as far as getting married, I know that the rules in South Dakota are actually pretty easy to get a license to, or your registration and everything like that. My next wedding that I'm officiating is coming up in Iowa, and they have a lot of rules to just going and getting your marriage license. And have you ever had anybody book with you and then be like, this is too much work, we decided against it?
I've not. I've had couples who've been in the awkward situation of having booked with me, and then they go to get their marriage license, not realizing how long it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, we won't have our license for our wedding.
Right.
And that happens in other states. In South Dakota, you get it same day. And some of those couples, when you've got, Minnesota, Iowa, where there are additional steps, they aren't same day issue states. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, tell you what, pop over to South Dakota quick. Just come over to Sioux Falls quick, Friday afternoon, get your license. I'll marry you here.
We'll do the first part.
We'll do the first part, and then I'll come to your big ceremony.
Yeah.
and it's really not uncommon for folks who live near the South Dakota border to come to South Dakota and get married because, in Minnesota, if you don't take premarital classes,
right,
your marriage license is like, I think 2 or 3 times as expensive.
right.
Um,
And a lot of people don't research that before they get there.
mm-hmm.
They don't, you can tell them a million times, look at the website, but then when you start to get a feeling they haven't looked at the website, and you've got to be like, I'm showing up at your house with the papers to show you this is what we got to do. It's like, this is not going to be the hardest part of being married, kids. You got to be able to do this part, and it's not the hardest part.
Right.
Right. The hardest part involves toilet plunging when it overflows. It's determining which one of you takes that role. What do you think? What do you see for South Dakota? Do you see yourself marrying people long into your life? Do you see this being something you want to do always? Do you see yourself ever getting tired of it?
This is something that I definitely see myself doing long term. I've actually run into the problem that I have suffered frequent career burnout during my life. And I didn't really know what caused that. I really hadn't examined it, but I was just like, I only last about 3 years in a job. And usually in January on that third year, I would either quit or get fired. Just like, I'm done. That's all there is to it. Didn't matter how good I was at the job or what. It was just, can't do it anymore. I'm burnt out. And on this one, I my 3 year mark came and went. That third January came and went, and that burnout feeling, nothing was even there.
Yeah.
And
this job provides cake. I'm sticking it out.
Right, exactly. And it turns out that, it's probably for me this flexibility of being self-employed, and it's, constantly having, my new clients, and I'm dealing with people on one very happy day of their life.
Yeah.
So it's not like I worked in insurance and was taking escalated calls, and no one ever so happy they called their insurance company and asked to speak to a supervisor.
Right. Yeah. That's like just a good warm feeling, is that idea of you are. It's like I've always talked about, florists like provide beauty in something every day of their career life, and bakers and things like that. You're feeding people, and this is sort of a feeding the soul type career. You're bringing people together and sending them off into the world, and then it's somebody else's business after that.
Right. Yeah. I'll have couples who will message me, a few months after the ceremony, and they'll be, like, hey, we've got this question and this question. And I'm like, I'm not a relationship counselor. I am just an officiant. Like,
right.
That's something that you probably need to reach out to someone else for help.
Right. Just get the good kind of toilet plunger, the one that looks like a cone. That's
I actually, it's kind of funny. Several of the offices that are around mine are counselors and therapists, and so I've joked before. I'm like, hey, if it doesn't work out, just come back and knock on any door up here but mine.
My card is downtown at the courthouse. Their card is outside my door. There we go. That's fabulous. What do you see for your kids? What makes you raise a family in South Dakota? Or do you think your kids will stay in Sioux Falls, or do you think your kids will? I mean, I know they're little. It's hard to know what they'll do. It could go either way. But do you see this being the kind of place where you're going to watch your kids grow up, and then you're going to watch grandkids grow up? And
I don't know. I look at Thomas right now. I've got just the one Thomas, and he's 5. And I look at him right now, and I definitely see that there's a lot of potential in South Dakota. I know that, I look at him, and he is a little engineer. He's got a little mathematical brain, and
Would
and
it be accurate to describe Thomas as precocious?
yes, yeah. He's a precocious little guy. He doesn't always want to give me a hug or a kiss, but he's like, Dad, I will give you a nod of acknowledgement. That's the kind of things he does. And so I do wonder about the future in South Dakota, because there's been issues with like brain drain in South Dakota,
Right.
where we haven't had enough of an environment for people who are technically minded to make
Right.
careers. And I know that that's something that people have worked on addressing for a long time. That's why Daktronics was founded in Brookings, was directly to combat the brain drain that they were seeing with SDSU graduates.
Right. It is hard when you're raising a child that is obviously a smart kid. I mean, like with my own child, with my nephews, they're obviously smart, and they're obviously going to stay smart, and they're obviously creative smart. And then I look around at South Dakota as a whole, and I'm like, please don't leave because you're bored.
Right.
We'll find something for you to do. Please don't leave because you're bored.
Yeah, I was in a situation where, I graduated high school and I left South Dakota in the military, and then there was that decision of what do I do when I was done with the military, and
Right.
I had ultimately made the decision to come back to South Dakota, and a big part of that was because of the importance of family for me, being
Right.
close to family, and I think that strength of family values was a huge part of it for me,
Right.
and then I hope that that'll continue into subsequent generations of my family, that strength, that tightness of family bonds will be there. But at the same time, I don't want that to be an albatross around my kid's neck either.
Yes. I think about that for myself, where I'm like, no, I'm going to give a directive that you must stay here because I'm here and I want you to be here. So make my happy your happy. My child is weighed under by hearing that a lot. Make my happy your happy. But also when I do see opportunities, even if they're ones that don't fit the kids, I know when I see things in Sioux Falls or in South Dakota develop, where I'm like, that's going to keep somebody's kid here. And then I just get a little warm heart, And
Mm-hmm.
so somewhere your family is going, the opportunity to mingle with strangers and have cake has kept Jake here.
Exactly.
You can't get more Midwest nice than that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Maybe if more jobs offered that, if we just had like wedding cake break.
Honestly, I think you're onto something there.
Right. It's a wedding cake break. What is your goal for your business? Well, before we talk about goal for your business, do you find it easy to be a business owner in South Dakota? Was it difficult getting set up to run this full time?
That's kind of a weird question. I guess it's kind of tough for me to answer. I mean, the basics of running a business don't seem too bad. There's a certain
there's probably an element of comfort knowing you're the only employee that you're responsible for.
Right now where I am, I'm the only person I have to worry about. Essentially, my biggest concern from the state level is just making sure that my quarterly sales tax is paid. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm not in a field where I have to worry about licensing, anything like that. I make sure that I have, plenty of insurance and liability to cover me in case someone gets a wild hair and wants to sue me. Um, but that element for just a niche service that doesn't require licensing, um, as a single person in a business, that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
When I look at the possibility of taking a step into expanding my business into something bigger, where then I'm like, where I like, because right now I'm a sole proprietor. Um, and so my business entity isn't separate at all from me as a person. If I start taking a next step as a business, then I'm going to want to look at LLC protections, to remove my liability from me a step.
Right.
But also changes how my taxation works. If I start hiring employees, that starts changing things. And that part becomes very intimidating. And I know that there are resources to help small business owners address that. And I know, in South Dakota, we've got, um, in Sioux Falls, we've got resources to help small businesses with that specifically. But
But
I've
you
also
would be that one of the other things is a lot of those resources would probably look at you and be like, you are a totally new animal to us.
right, exactly. I've talked to them and I've looked at their resources, and I'm not going to follow that regular pattern of okay, write your plan, get the loan, do this
Right.
because I'm
Here I
I
am. I'm ready to go.
I'm already going. I'm self-funding as it is. It's a little bit of a struggle there because when I do reach out into like local entrepreneur groups and I say, hey, I am not in a business with repeat customers, you know, but yeah, I need some help with customer acquisition. And all of the experienced business owners go, well, if you don't have repeat customers, you're doing something wrong. And I'm like, cool, let me get out there and wreck some marriages quick. Like, are you going to tell undertakers to go exhume people and bury them twice?
Right. Right. Exactly. You're kind of like repeat customers is kind of frowned upon in my industry.
I don't repeat customers,
Yeah, those Yelp reviews.
Right.
I see though, like we talked about before we recorded, I when I went to Mall of America, there's a chapel in the Mall of America, and I talked to the lady there, and she was talking about having been marrying people for 25 years, and she was so Minnesota, and I'm just like, what a happy job. And she did talk about that. She would correct me and say, no, I do have repeat customers. She talked about a lot of people that come in for vow renewals to celebrate a milestone anniversary and things like that.
Well, and I do have I do have a certain amount of repeat customers, but it's not necessarily the same as you would see in a lot of other industries where, like a retail environment,
Right, right,
or a lot of other services where, people aren't coming in for an annual vow renewal.
right.
Uh, but I will have a certain percentage of people who, and I saw a lot of this with COVID, where people came in and they had something small and quick to make their marriage legal, and then they did have a larger ceremony
When
later.
it was safe.
And I came back and officiated that larger ceremony as well.
Right, right. And I suppose there's the element of if you're good at it, if the bride has six sisters, they're gonna, eventually your hope is probably always to catch the oldest one right out the gate. So then you can just book all the other weddings. Be like,
And
that's 10 years of business right there.
and it's funny. I do have there's a family who lives down the street from me who I have married all of their kids.
What a fun
And
sentence to say. Oh, yeah, I love the Johnsons up the road. I married a lot of their kids.
yeah, but yeah, I married all their children, and it was just kind of coincidence that um, the first two of their three kids that I married, like they didn't know that they had both booked me. And
Oh,
the one was like, well, he does a good job. I might as well too.
Grandma really liked him. Let's bring him back.
Yeah, with their third kid that I married, it was a military member who was home on Christmas leave. So they invited me over and gave me a big old tin of home baked cookies and everything too, because they're like, "You might be part of the family now."
Right, right. You just start, if you see the door open and people coming and going from their place, you just start going in. You're like, I
Right.
must, here I am. What are we here for? Bunko night? Great.
It's
Do you, when people ask you, if you want to be involved in things, do you find yourself saying, I do, and do you?
oh my goodness, no, I should. Really, what
Here's my card.
people ask me if I'm involved in something is like, hold on, let me check my calendar. I got to see if I'm in a wedding, and I've got a calendar on my phone with all of my weddings. As soon as I book a wedding, or as soon as someone even inquires about a wedding, and they're pretty sure they're going to book me, it goes on my phone calendar.
It's a lot of save the dates at your house, I'm sure. Does that make it hard as a family? I mean, you're like Saturday afternoons are work. I mean, does that
Yeah,
limit your weekend getaways with your wife?
um, I am pretty fortunate in that my wife is extraordinarily introverted, um, and she's a homebody.
Yeah.
Um, during the height of COVID, we were 6 months into isolating before she was like, "Hey, I want to go for a walk outside or something." It was no problem for her. She's been working from home since we got married. She's an ultra remote telecommuter who telecommutes to her job in Maryland still. So
So we were probably 6 months into isolation before she was like, I'm just hearing this about people not going out.
exactly. Yeah. She was just like, I love that the world suddenly got introvert friendly and I can order groceries.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Uh, but yeah, Sunday is usually our family day, um, because that's when I'm less likely to have weddings.
Right.
Fridays and Saturdays, yeah, I'm almost always have something going on,
Right.
and it's I mean, yeah, I'll book weddings on Sundays, but usually I don't have as much demand. Pretty much the only day that I won't book and book, but I really vet people is Wednesdays, because who gets married on a Wednesday? I'm always suspicious of
Somebody
Wednesday.
that wants to make a joke about, so we had our honeymoon on hump day.
I, I don't know. Like I've had all of my like extra bizarre wedding stories have happened on Wednesdays.
Really?
So like if someone wants to book a wedding on a Wednesday, I'm like, cool. And why that day? Okay. And like, I mean, like I vet them. Like I make sure that it's a special date or that they have like a significant reason. Cause if they're just like, no, we're just doing Wednesday because that's the day we expect to have, $40 for a marriage license. I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
no. Mm-mm,
No.
mm-mm.
I'm going to make you come back 3 Wednesdays in a row before we're going to do the official part.
Right. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's the
If you can't
what
even commit to a Sunday brunch, can you commit to a marriage?
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. What is the
bizarre
one
on Wednesdays.
what is something that you think more people should take into consideration when planning their wedding? What is some unknown thing that you that is unknown because we don't I'm not in a wedding every day, but you've seen more weddings and you're like, there's that one thing, there's that thing that the brides never think of, or there's that one thing that the best man always forgets. What is the one thing that it seems like an unknown random, but in the wedding industry people would go, uh-huh.
I think something that I specifically have seen is um, the groom shouldn't be surprised when his ring doesn't fit on his wedding day, even if it's been sized.
That's a good
Um,
one.
it's kind of funny, but I think what it is maybe when the groom's standing up there, maybe his blood pressure is a little high and his knuckle swells up.
Yep.
I would say 9 out of 10 grooms, that ring gets stuck right on the
Right
knuckle.
around here. Yep.
And it's so funny because I'll lean in and I'll go, it's not going to take if you don't get it over the knuckle. And the bride and the groom will both laugh. And I don't know if it's just the laugh or what, but usually right then that ring will pop over the
There
knuckle.
it'll go. Yeah.
Chuckling. So
Yeah. Like when they stop focusing and trying to force it. Yeah.
yeah, and that'll get it over the knuckle. And that's kind of been my trick to help them get the wedding ring on, is to crack a joke and the ring gets stuck.
Right.
And like maybe the blood pressure goes a little lower for a second, or maybe they're not trying to force it, but
Well, and I think that guys forget, like women, we're holding our bouquets usually, but guys, they stand for the whole ceremony with their hands clenched at their waist, and then they pick it up and try and do something with it, and it's like, I've been cutting off my circulation and locking my knuckles, so
that's probably a big part of it too. Yeah. I think another thing that people need to keep in mind when they're planning weddings is that, and this is probably going to be a controversial statement for a lot of people, but there's really no such thing as a wedding tradition. Anything that we call a wedding tradition is really just something that was popular when both your mother and grandmother were getting married. And so a lot of people are very concerned with, but I have to do this because it's tradition.
right,
And not really anything that you have to do with your
right,
wedding. I mean, when you look at what is required of your wedding, you just have to say that you want to be married in front of witnesses and your officiant, and have that little piece of paper from the government, and everything else is icing.
right,
And when you look at the traditions, your great grandmother didn't get married the same way your mother did. Your great grandmother probably didn't have a wedding dress. She probably wore her Sunday best to her wedding. She, if you're concerned, but I'm not getting married in a church, there's a decent chance that your great grandmother didn't get married in a church because the local church didn't fit extended family. She
right,
might have gotten married in not a wedding barn, but an actual barn, or
right, right,
that where there was the room for people. So a lot of things that we consider wedding traditions, they're all pretty recent. And what we think about as wedding traditions can change so quickly too. Right now, unity sand and unity ceremonies, things like that. Like, okay, those are wedding traditions now. But 10 years ago, doing unity sand at a wedding, that was kind of out there and weird.
that was kind of edgy. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I had first wedding I did unity sand at in, I think, 2009. Like, I had to read up on it. I'd never heard of that before. And I had people coming up to me after the wedding going, what was that? Unity sand? Where's that from? I was like,
right,
oh, it's a Hawaiian thing. And they're like, okay, it's kind of weird.
right, right,
Now it's super common, so
exactly,
are much more mutable for weddings than people think. And so people need to be, I think, less concerned about what's traditional and what do they need to do, and just more about what makes them happy with their wedding.
right. That it symbolizes you as a couple.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that the officiants get free cake.
And the officiants get free cake.
That's might be a regulation, not just tradition. Once we
Yeah.
call it a regulation, it has to happen.
Has to happen. Misdemeanor if I don't get cake.
Well, misdemeanors are real easy to get in South Dakota. But that's for another episode.
I think it's also a misdemeanor if I don't turn in the marriage license. So
right. Well, thank you so much, Jake, for talking to me about starting off married life in the Dakotas. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up for the day. How do you sign off when you leave a wedding?
bye. Thanks for having me.
No, that's all, folks. That's it. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pretty chill. Like I'm just there to make it legal. There's not I'm not the yeah. I'm the guy who showed up from the internet just to Uber their wedding into legality. So
yeah, you don't want to stick around for any family feuds afterwards. Just
right. Yeah. They're like my family. Someone's gonna pull a sword cane and someone else will pull a gun, and then the sheriff will show up.
And then he'll say, "Why wasn't I invited to this wedding? Why am I just now getting here?"
Right. I'd have to invite me back and ask me about Showdown at Great Grandma's funeral. But
well, on that note, thank you, Jake. All right. Well, that was a great chat. I want to have a cosplay wedding now. I can't decide who I would have this cosplay wedding with or what exactly theme it would be, but I feel like everybody should be planning their theme wedding. Even if you're already married, you can have a theme vow renewal. And now Jacob Cox, you can get a hold of him and he'll be like, wizard costume, check. Frankenstein, check. He's going to get all the marks. I am totally looking forward to finding more volunteers for my 605 Speaks project. And this is going to be a new question. I'm going to start asking people, tell me about the last South Dakota wedding you were at. So if you have a great South Dakota wedding story, whether it's yours or someone else's, look me up. I want to hear it. 605speaks.com. All you got to do is click on my calendar link and book a time, and we'll Zoom to each other and you'll tell me all about it. So help me find volunteers from all over our great state. And now I hope you're back to your regularly scheduled afternoon planning your next themed event. Have a good day, everybody.